One.
So, the question whether engineering is a profession is not an easy one to answer. We will explore it, and to some degree, it comes down to where the primary loyalty lies. Because, of course, engineers don't typically have clients, do they? I mean, some engineers have their own practice, PEs who operate independently, but the vast majority of engineers work for businesses, work for corporations. So that complicates things a lot. Some people would say that if you have a job, like if you earn a wage as opposed to charging fees, if you are a salaried engineer, so-called bench engineer, and you earn wages by being employed by a corporation, that immediately disqualifies you as being a professional, because you lack the independence and autonomy necessary in order to have the discretion to act as a professional. You don't have it because you are dependent upon that company. Others would say that well, it's a tough question. Others would say, I think with some reason, that despite that ambivalence, that as long as engineers keep in mind that their primary duty is to the public and not to their client or employer, then they're still professionals. But if they were ever to put the employer or above or before the public, then they would be violating their professional duties. So I suppose it all rests on this, which really rests on this, the first canon. So, we'll be exploring that further. One more question: what difference does it make? What difference does it make to you as a practicing engineer whether you consider yourself a professional? Again, that notion of not professional in the sense of somebody who does something for a living, but rather, I would say, a deeper sense of somebody who's a professional because they are a member of a profession. What difference does it make to you? What difference does it make? Well, one of the things one difference is that as an engineer, you are beholden to a code of ethics. We'll look into one version of it. Every profession has to have an internally set and maintained and regulated and enforced code of ethics. It's absolutely essential. And we're not talking about, some companies' code of ethics, individual businesses' codes of ethics. We're talking about the code of ethics that engineers as a profession set for themselves, which transcends any sort of loyalty to client or employer. That you don't decide that. We'll see. I mean, the idea is that the NSPE code of ethics is supposed to apply to all engineers, not just professional engineers. So the difference is, in a way, is already there. But what difference does it make whether you consider yourself a professional or not? Well, if you consider yourself as an engineer, as an ordinary worker, a skilled worker, a knowledge worker, a symbol manipulator, and technology, certainly your salary is higher than the average person's. Your duties are more demanding, perhaps, and the kind of work you do is more specialized and difficult. That is one thing. But even so, you could consider yourself just a highly skilled worker. That would not make you a professional. If you were to consider yourself a professional, you would then have to think about what your duties were, ethical duties. You might have to say that you hold yourself to a higher ethical standard. And that would be both to your client or your employer, but especially to the public. That you would. The difference is that if you consider yourself a professional, there's just some duties that you have that ordinary workers don't, and responsibilities and limits that you have to acknowledge that ordinary workers don't. So I think it makes a world of difference, really. And it's how you regard the nature of what you do, and ultimately how you think of yourself in relation to the world. There's nothing wrong with making money, and there's nothing wrong with making money as an engineer, and there's nothing wrong with becoming an engineer because you want to make money. The reasons for people going into engineering, even if they're entirely selfish or money related, they're completely irrelevant. It's what you do as an engineer. It's how you practice that matters. It's not your motivations for becoming one. Your motivations could be entirely monetary, but as long as your practice, your behavior as an engineer is not motivated entirely by money, it's fine. So really, this is a class in engineering ethics and how people conduct the practice of engineering and what ethical aspects there are to that. So I think it does make a big difference. Whether you as an engineer consider yourself a professional in the sense of being a member of a profession or not.